These are their stories.
We just did so much. When we were, you know what, I'm not going to do the regular. So what I was going to do is go through, but I'm not going to go through. Whatever I remember, I'm going to remember. But in our time, I need people to kind of remember, like understand why that is. Like you look at somebody like your CV and where you played, and then you look at Issei, and then you look at me, and then you look at Ali, and then you look at a guy like Julian, and then you look at a guy like Julian's brother, and then you look at Thomas Rosinski and others, different pathways around the same time. And people don't understand that sometimes when you're changing teams, it's not because you're not a good player. Sometimes the situation changes or the coach comes in. They don't get it. They don't understand it. You know, and when we were coming up in the 2000s, you know, I would say things started to get kind of better or a little bit more modernized. Like we were kind of stuck. Anything that happened from, I would say, like the 80s into the 2000s, like that 20-year period was kind of similar, the same in terms of like knowing someone and how hard it was to get in. As a Canadian, no respect whatsoever. There was no representation whatsoever unless you were British or Irish or something, because the national team was just full of them. And to be Black and then to be Canadian, it's like you're Black twice, or you're just you're not respected in any way, shape, or form.
Like that,
yeah. You know what I mean? Like you're
I mean,
paint the picture, man.
I'll put it this way: it made me grow a big chip on my shoulder, and in a lot of ways, it helped me move forward in my career, and in a lot of ways, it helped me. It caused me to take steps back. Because fighting for respect in a European environment requires a sort of like you don't get anything that you don't kill for. Let's put it that way. And you know, there are people that are going to respect it, and they'll give you what it is that you feel that you earn. And there's people that will resent it, and they'll try to take it away from you. So there's a lot of factors that are always involved in it. And as I've gotten older, you kind of look back at some of the things that you may have done or said at that moment were reactionary based on the environment you felt you were in. As a more mature person, you realize, that probably wasn't the best thing to do. But at that moment in time, this is what was for you required to survive in that environment. So everybody has a different personality in how they handle that type of situation. But one way or another, in order for you to survive in that situation, you had to have it in you to try and force people to respect you. Whether you did that in a more, let's say, if we're talking about Black history, if you're looking at the Malcolm X or the Martin Luther King way, you know, whether you did it with prolonged patience of trying to show and prove what you were able to bring to a team, or whether you walked into the coach's office or you walked into the field and you had to not care what people think about you. You just went out there and tried to show what you could to try and force the issue. There's a lot of different ways to get it done, and everybody's situation is always going to be different. But at the same time, that's no different from anybody else that's in this environment. I think the difference that you're referring to is that there's no way for anybody that was a Canadian football fan to gauge somebody's position or somebody's how do I want to say this? To gauge a certain player's certain situation, because like you said, there's no coverage. And then on top of that, there was no local coverage to actually have me draw interest into somebody's story. And then at the same time, give that person something to draw back on if they do fall into hard times. Nowadays, although maybe the CPL is a little bit too low, but just the fact that there are MLS teams that if a player, for example, is 18, he's in Europe right now, and he's gotten to a position where, like he's gone to any of the teams that you've mentioned, and things don't work out, there's a good chance he might find himself on the MLS roster, and then he quote unquote will get a fairer chance to say, okay, were you somebody that was worth the time or not? We never had that. It's either you were going to make it in Europe, or then you were the quote unquote failure who's going to play in local league somewhere in Canada, and then that was it. Or you're going to university, or maybe for some people it was too late. You couldn't go to university anymore because you've already gone into a professional environment, so you can't go and get a free education and go into university. You have to go to a Canadian university. And at that point, it was just how do I say this? It was a one shot, either you make it or you fail situation.
Thank you.
And there was no chance for you to try. And even if you were a really good player, whatever the reason was that you didn't make it, it didn't matter because the result was the only thing that mattered. There was no way for you to go anywhere else to try and improve whatever it is that you may have still had been able to offer because it wasn't available. And now there's so many avenues that are available. Even now, if you're looking at the career paths of, let's say, the two most prolific scorers we have right now, Kyle Aaron and Jonathan David, they didn't take any normal career path to where they were. They came pretty much out of nowhere. Like Jonathan David is from Haitian and he was in Ottawa, and then from Ottawa somehow he ended up in Belgium, I think it was, and then from there he ended up moving up the ranks. If Jonathan David in Belgium, wherever he was, had done a little bit of something but it didn't work out, he can still come to MLS. He can still go to other situations, and he can still be able to develop and still become a good enough player. Same thing with Kyle Aaron. He went to university. From university, he gets into MLS. Back then, if you went to university, there's no MLS. Where are you gonna go? Yeah. So at the age of 18, you finish university. It's too late to go to Europe. Your career is done.
Over. Yeah. I don't think people understand that. I mean, it was very difficult when you went away. That's why I look at y'all. You know, you, Ali, especially you, and I even give credit to the Miles O'Connors and obviously the Julians and everybody else that made it. I believe, like even the Chris Posniaks and the Mike Kokowskis and everyone that grew up.
Mike Kokowski has a career.
That was a great career. Like, I'm just saying, like, I mean, you had to eat, and the thing that you said was true, that I feel like if we understand each other because we came from the same thing, is that when you came back, there was no support. No. You were a failure. You had your chance. It's over for you. It's like people trying to drown you in order for them to get up or to make themselves feel good because they never had an opportunity. And they could have been someone that was good too.
These are their stories.